Craftsman Overdrive anti-slip wrench set on sale. Are they worth the money? Is this something that you should have? Do you even need these? Is this something that you would carry? Should you carry these as a secondary? Should these be the wrench that you carry all the time? Should it be the only wrench that you buy? These are all of the questions that we're going to answer in today's video. Is this a good wrench? Should you buy it? We should make this clear that I did not get these sent to me. These are not free. This was something that I did buy. This is a fairly new edition. I've had this wrench for about 10 months, I believe. And I want to tell you my thoughts on it now that I've had it for a while. And I want to kind of give you an idea what it is that I think about these, how well they've held up. I've put them into my rotation and I've done some work with them. I've actually kind of made them my everyday wrench as much as I can for a guy that doesn't use wrenches every single day. But I've made them my main use wrench for quite a while. And I wanted to kind of see just how well they hold up. And do they have a place in your life as an independent man, or even as a mechanic, or as a farmer, rancher, whatever you may be? Do they have a place in your life? All right, guys, this is ridiculous. Somebody suggested that I wear these in my reviews. Personally, I think it's ridiculous. Look at this. My hands are sweaty. If I'm going to do a review on a wrench or a tool, I don't feel that I have to wear a pair of rubber gloves just to make that review. If I can't come to y'all authentically and the way that I normally work, then you're probably watching the wrong video. So you can see right here, if I can get it to focus well, it's 6-point rather than 12-point. Kind of like these wrenches that I've had for many years now. These are the original Craftsman American made. And I want to say right off the bat, guys, that the new Craftsman, such as these right here, I'm not nearly as big of a fan of as these old school American Craftsman. In fact, they have so many good options. And in many cases, I don't necessarily think that Craftsman is even the direction to go. But there are a few places that I've seen Craftsman still be the best option. So let's go over this and see if this one is worth having. So you can see right there, we've got the anti-slip teeth. Now these come in the, like this, similar to this, in a Matco. They have them in the snap-on. And recently, they've actually started coming out with the Icon line. They have this right here, but the Icon doesn't have this. So that could be good or bad, and we'll kind of go over that. I've done a brief review on the Icon, and I did like them. But I want to go over a little bit whether this might be a better option even. So right off the bat, you can tell kind of the teeth. They're aggressive, but not terribly aggressive. And then back in here, you can see it is definitely more aggressive, similar to this one right here, which I have not done a review on yet. And you can see they're both a hex head, and they both have those deeper indented teeth. And what that gives you the ability to do is, even when you have a really rounded bolt, if it starts to slip past this point, and it gets into here, it's going to grab those other teeth and really kind of help pull you through, okay? And the same thing goes on this side. That does help a lot. But let's talk about whether or not this wrench is actually worth having, whether or not you should buy this brand or whether you should buy another one. Maybe you should buy Snap-on. Maybe this is not your best option. Okay, and Icon being such a good option, they're both made, I believe, in Taiwan, but they're not made in America. That's the main thing. So you definitely shouldn't limit yourself to Craftsman like you maybe should have back in the day when they had really awesome tools. Now, they also both have a lifetime warranty. Walk in the store, grab it. And I will say I have tried both. I've gone in with Icons and I've gone in with Craftsman, and I've never had an issue out of either, even with the new Craftsman. The problem with Craftsman for me is clear that if I bring in an American made, they're going to give me a Taiwanese made. I think that's where it's made. Forgive me if that's not. I'm going to just tell you, this does work fantastic. It absolutely does, and I love it, okay? This end right here, it works really well for rounded off bolts. Obviously, this end does not work quite as well as this end. If I'm talking about some of my negative points, you can see this wrench, it's been used a pretty good bit. They're starting to get some rust, some dents and some dings, maybe scratches, nothing too major. But one of the things, and I don't know if you can pick it up, one of the things that I don't like is the fact that it's already starting to pick up some rust, okay, after 10 months. I've not left these outside. I've left these, they're in my toolbox, in my shop, just like any other tool, okay? I've had, as an example, I've had these wrenches right here for, 12, 14 years. And I just don't see, I don't know that there's any rust on there, okay? So as far as Craftsman goes, I'm very disappointed in that. I have to tell you, I do not like the fact that I'm seeing rust show up on that gunmetal that quickly. I've done nothing but handle these and work with these. I've not put these in a horrible environment. I'm starting to see rust in here. It's not major, guys, and this is not necessarily a deal breaker, okay? But I think it's worth pointing out that there's definitely starting to come some rust on there, and I don't know. I have not owned the Icon. I've just worked with them. I work for sawmill companies doing shutdowns, and a lot of them have the Icon brand on their trucks. So I have a lot of experience and a lot of time using the Icons, but I don't own them, so I don't know how they would act, you know, like on a side-by-side comparison if the Icon would have been laying next to it. Obviously, the Matco and the Snap-ons, I think, would do a lot better. But it is disappointing to me right off the bat. Craftsman, I think you need to, if you're going to have something made in Taiwan, then you at least need to address that. Maybe it's just maybe it's just this one. I don't know. I do know that 3/4 is one that I use more often. 3/4 and 13 millimeter. So let's check out the 13 millimeter and see what that one looks like. Let's see, where is that one at? Okay, I haven't actually looked it over, guys. That one, I see a little rust right here, and I don't know if you can pick that up. Just a little bit in the A. And I probably use this 13 millimeter more than the other ones. But I don't see nearly as much rust in that one. Let's check the 1/2 inch, because I know I use the 1/2 inch quite a bit. Okay. And I know, guys, there's fingerprints all over these. Some people are always like, man, y'all, you should be wiping your stuff off, keeping it, you know, and I'm like, guys, I'm just a man working on his farm, taking care of my issues. Yes, I do try to keep my grease and everything cleaned off. But look, guys, at least I'm coming to you and showing you tools that's been actually used. And I'm not showing you a brand new tool, okay? So it is what it is. Here's the 10 millimeter. Everyone uses a 10 millimeter a lot. If I'm being honest, here on the farm, on farm equipment, and then on sawmills and things like that, the 10 millimeter is not my most used wrench. Now, it is one of them. I definitely use it, but it's not the most used. But I don't see any real evidence of rust on any of them except for the 13 and the 3/4. Those are the two that and the 3/4 is the worst. So maybe it's just, you know, maybe I got something on here. Maybe somehow I got a little salt, or, you know, maybe I had a lot of excess sweat on my hands. I still don't think it's an excuse for the wrench, but maybe there was just something wrong with this one specifically. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there for y'all to see. Trying to be honest. If I'm being honest, I have used these so much that if there was ever going to be an issue, there should have been an issue. This one has minor rust right there where it looks like it's been worn so much it's finally starting to wear down. But I mean, it has held up very well, and I know for a fact, you know, I got a little bit of something inside there, maybe. Yeah, a little bit. Well, that may just be rust that came off from the bolt. I don't even know if that's actual rust, guys, on the wrench itself. I don't think that it is. You can be the judge of that. I'm just showing you, just trying to show you this stuff as it is, guys. Well, I do love the fact that they are quite a bit longer. I mean, they have some really good length. It's comparable to this one right here. I've had this one for quite a while. This one is the very, I think it was the very first Taiwanese made wrench, and I've had it for a while. It's been a good wrench, but of course you can see it's got some rusting on it, unlike the American made ones. So that just seems to be an issue with the Taiwanese made ones. They're just a little bit cheaper in that manner. But as far as holding up, it has held up. I've definitely abused it in ways that I shouldn't have. I like the fact that it's got the length. I like the fact that it's got the 6-point. So with that being said, I won't say too much here, but just having that 6-point on a ratcheting wrench has actually been more useful than I thought it would be. When I first got this, I thought it would be a gimmick, that it was more for looks, because who's going to need anti-slip on a ratcheting wrench? But I have really liked it for a couple of reasons, and we'll go into a video on these. I've really liked it because I do have the option of turning it wherever I want, and if a fastener is a metric or standard, it seems to work just fine regardless. So that's been pretty handy as far as that goes. And as far as this goes, if I'm in a spot and I know I shouldn't be using a metric or a standard, I should use the right wrench for the job, but I'm not going to say that there hasn't been a place or two where I went ahead and I had this 6-point and I just tried it. I put it on there. It was not the right one, but by golly, it broke it off and it did not tear it up. So the real question is right now, since I've used Icon and I've used these Craftsman, which one do I think is better? Well, I'm not entirely sure, and I'll just go over the points that I do know. First of all, the Icon, I don't know if they still are this way, but as far as I know, the ones that I used they had an aggressive head up here, just like this one, and they had a regular head back here. Now, I think some of them had the ratcheting regular head, like this one, and then some of them just had the regular head like this. So the upside to this one is that it's got both. And considering that this is my secondary wrench and not my only wrench, I like that. I can just grab this one and it's got every anti-slip option I need right there in one package. The upside to the other one would be that you would be more likely to be able to use it as a daily driver. I will say right off the bat, and this is a thing that a lot of people ask about, is this going to tear up the fastener? Is it going to mar it? Well, some of them will and some of them won't. I've heard that the Matco is really bad about that. I've personally not tried the Matco out, so I do not know. But I will say that when I use the Icon, it does seem to leave some marking, some minor marking on here. This Craftsman is not as bad about leaving marking, okay, when it's on a fastener that is really hard to get off. Obviously, the more marking it leaves, the less likely it is to actually slip. So does that mean that the Icon is better? I'm not sure, but that is something worth mentioning, is that these do not seem to leave marking on the fastener as bad as the Icon. That's my personal experience that I've had, okay? Y'all leave it in the comments what your experience has been if you've had a different experience. The one thing I forgot to mention that I don't like about these as much as the icon, is the fact that these are tighter, okay? The jaw is a little bit tighter, like I'm talking very, very, just a slight bit tighter. And that's good, and I think that's why it doesn't mar the fastener as bad, and I also think that's why it could be better about not slipping. But the downside is if you get a rusted bolt, and there's a lot of buildup of rust, this does not go on the fastener quite as easy. It's not that big of a deal. You can kind of beat the rust off or whatever you need to get it on there. It's just worth mentioning that if you come to a fastener that does have a decent buildup of rust, but it isn't wore down or rounded, then it can be a little bit harder to get on and off, okay? That's just been my observation. It's just because it's milled really, really tight, okay? But if the fastener's rounded, I have had no issue getting them on here. So right in here is where I really like these anti-slip wrenches. These different places on a lot of these older tractors, and really in a lot of different places, period, this bolt right here has a little bit of rounding. It's not bad. But if you've ever worked on any of these, anything like this at all, this is the injector pump on one of our older tractors, then you know that even if it's a good bolt, it always has just a little bit of the ability to round. So I like the fact that, look, I can still get on there. I've got plenty of room anyway because I'm working on a tractor. It's not like a truck or in a really tight spot. And I like the fact that it's got that 6-point, okay? So the 6-point is not a negative for me, you know, even though I've got that longer arc right there over maybe something else. But I've also got this right here. So when I get in these places, and of course I've got some paint on this one right here. This may not be the right size. Yeah, it is the right size. In fact, that's a little bit loose, y'all. Look at that. So I've got a little bit of paint on there, and you can see that simulates what I'm talking about with the rust. But that right there, I can get this on these bolts, these little bitty fasteners. You know, this is a 5/16 right here. These little fasteners are terrible about rounding off. And then once you round them off, they can really be difficult to get in here and do exactly what you need without tearing them up. This is a 1969 Lincoln weld machine. And this spot right here is really, really rounded. I don't know if you can tell just how rounded that is. There's no way on a piece of tubing that you're going to get this side in here. So having this one right here is really nice because you can see this is the size of the wrench that's supposed to be on there. Okay? And I love this because I can actually get on here and use this. I can actually get this off without tearing it up. Okay, so this is another really good example right here where you can use something like this, because these little small nuts and bolts, you know, they got that little flathead, but everyone knows that these flatheads are terrible about stripping and tearing up. So that's why I really like the fact that these anti-slip, and I like the leverage, the longer length on these things. This is really handy in a lot of these places. You know, in this older machine like this, I got plenty of room. I don't have to worry about not having enough room to get in here. So I can actually get in there, get that on there, and I don't have to worry as much about that slipping or tearing up. And because this is not as aggressive as some, I'm not really feeling like that I'm making this fastener worse. You know, I don't want to have to worry about replacing this later on or something like that. So I'm keeping it, I'm maintaining the integrity of this fastener while at the same time not worrying about slipping, because I do have that jaw. I do have that little bit of an anti-slip mechanism, okay? So I do really like that. And I really think that this might be some of my favorite places for these wrenches above all. Okay guys, final thoughts on whether or not I would buy these right here. I do really like them. Whether or not they are better than the Icon, I don't know. Obviously the point about the tearing up the fastener. That's something worth weighing out. I think that's something you should decide for yourself. You should definitely weigh in whether or not you like the 6-point or not. I like having the 6-point on there. I like the wrench. Whether or not it's the best option with that rusting, I think that's something you have to decide for yourself. Is that going to be a deal breaker? Does it matter? And then keep in mind that you are able to take these back and return them. Ultimately, I think both of them are great, the Icon and this Craftsman. I think really it's just a toss-up of which one is better for what you want. As far as aesthetically going, I like the gunmetal, you know, but what does that matter if they rust or something like that? But they do seem to be a good wrench. They do seem to hold up, and they do seem to do their job. If you can get them on sale, I definitely think they're worth getting. If you're going to pay full price for them, I mean, you're going to pay a lot of money for a product like this anyway. And I do think having this anti-slip version is worth having. But here's the reality, guys. I've done a lot of work without these. A lot. This is not a must-have. If you're not a mechanic for a living, then I do not think that this anti-slip wrench, regardless of which one you're buying, is a must-have. I do think that it makes my job nicer. I think that it's something I'm glad to have. And now that my time is becoming more valuable, I really think that I'm really glad I've got them. So you're going to have to make that decision for yourself. I wouldn't have it as my first pick. I wouldn't have it as my first wrench. And I wouldn't prioritize getting this. And I would be okay never having these. But they are nice. I do like them. It may be an option worth considering. And they're not a bad wrench at all. And I do think that they are probably worth the money. Definitely worth getting them if they're on sale. I wouldn't pass them up if they're on sale, if you can afford it, and if you're in that place in your life. So, I like them. Go check out the other video that we have on the Craftsman Overdrive 180 tooth ratchet. I was honestly surprised, and they were an interesting ratchet. I'll give you that much. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. If you have seen it, don't spoil it for everyone else. Like and subscribe.